Greetings, everyone. Pete Pardo here from Sea of Tranquility. Welcome to another edition of Top 10 Songs. Today, we've got a highly requested episode from a gentleman who happens to be one of the most iconic guitar players of all time. Of course, I'm talking about Jeff Beck, so I'm going to take a look at his entire career here, which includes some of the early Jeff Beck group stuff as well as his solo stuff, and I'm going to pull out 10 tracks from throughout his career that mean a lot to me. I will tell you right off the bat that this was a very hard list to put together because I am an absolute huge fan of like the blow-by-blow wired there and back era, okay, as well as I love, Guitar Shop, and I love the early Jeff Beck group as well as, the early bands, whether you call them the Truth Band or the Jeff Beck group or just Jeff Beck, right, with Rod Stewart and all those guys, as well as the actual Jeff Beck group with Cozy Powell, Max Middleton, so on and so forth. So this was pretty tough for me. I have a lot of honorable mentions, but let's go through my top 10, all right? And again, it's a good list. I may change my mind on some of these a week from now because there's a bunch of tunes that I really wanted to squeeze in my top 10, and I'm like, man, it can only fit 10, right? Well, in this case, I fit 11. So yes, you guessed it. I'm going to pull a mulligan once again for my number 10. I've got a tie for number 10 because there's just one track that I could not leave off, and that would be Sophie, okay, the great instrumental track from the Wired album, written by Jan Hammer. Just such a great tune, a great fusion track, and that was actually not in my top 10, and then as I was going through the list, I'm like, there's no way I can leave this song out. So it's tied here for number 10 with Got the Feeling from the Rough and Ready album, which is a killer tune off a very underrated album. I love the kind of, real kind of funky feeling to that tune. And what I find really interesting about a lot of that album, especially that song, reminds me a lot of the great band Rare Earth. Okay, another really cool kind of like hard rock R&B funk band from the early mid-'70s. So Got the Feeling and Sophie tied for number 10. Let's move on to number 9 from the Beckola album, the second album. How about Spanish Boots? Kickin' heavy blues rock track, like a lot of those first two albums are. You can put a real comparison between those first couple of Led Zeppelin albums and those first couple of Jeff Beck albums, right? So similar. The framework, the blueprint for both bands on the same wavelength, okay? Number 8, we're going to go to the Beck, Bogert, and Appice, or Beck, Bogert, and Appice album, however you want to say Carmine's last name. The tune Lady. Great heavy rock song on that album. That album probably, and we talked about that album a couple weeks ago, that album probably should have been a lot greater than it was. I always thought that they needed an actual lead singer in that band, and that's the reason why the album, in my opinion, suffered just a little bit. Really cool tunes, just not a real strong lead vocalist presence. Okay. That happens to be my pool vacuum. Came up for air. Don't mind that. But Lady is a great track, probably my favorite song off that album. It's got great thunderous rhythms and ripping Jeff Beck guitar work. All right, go back under. It's like a submarine. It's like one of those little, robot vacuums that you just kind of plug in and it goes about. It's got a little bag on the inside. Anyway, so every now and then it comes up for air and it climbs all the way up, as it's doing right now. I don't know why. It doesn't late in the season for whatever reason. I know you guys don't care about this, but anyway, so Lady, number 8. Coming in at number 7, we're going to go to my beloved Blow by Blow album, and I'll just throw it out there right now. I probably could have had my entire top 10 filled with Blow by Blow songs. That's how much I love that album. But I do like a lot of other tunes quite a bit, and I figured how much fun is it to just list off all the Blow by Blow songs, right? But Scatterbrain coming in for me at number 7. Just a majestic album with great playing, great compositions, really good ensemble work from the whole bunch of musicians who recorded on that album. And Scatterbrain, I absolutely love to death. Coming in at number 6 from the first album, Truth, all right, Let Me Love You, Baby. Vintage Rod Stewart on vocals. How cool would it have been if Rod and Jeff stayed together longer or did more together? I think that for me, that's like one of the lineups or one of the musical collaborations that probably should have and could have lasted a lot longer than it did. I mean, they gave us such great music for 2 albums. Could you imagine if they did it for longer? Crazy to think about it, right? But Let Me Love You, Baby. That's got all sorts of groove. It's just a grueling, grindy blues rock tune. Love it. Coming in at number 5, all right, let's go all the way up to the late 80s. How about Jeff Beck's Guitar Shop? The gorgeous Where Were You? It's not a long tune. It's all instrumental. Some of Beck's most beautiful, haunting guitar work on any Jeff Beck album. Absolutely love it. It's just such a haunting, beautiful piece. Can't get enough of that. Coming in at number 4, let's go to the Wired album, another favorite album of mine. How about Lead Boots? All right, the kickoff track. How energetic is that piece, right? Awesome Jan Hammer synths and cranking Jeff Beck guitar work. That's a really, really fantastic album, and I love the drum work and the compositions of Narada Michael Walden on that album. Really, really strong. Number 3, a perennial favorite of mine. I've loved this song since the first time I heard it. Freeway Jam from Blow by Blow. Doesn't get much better than that. One of, every now and then I always get into conversations with people about what are some of the great, instrumental rock songs that got played on the radio a lot. That's one of them, right? It's definitely one of them, because I know back in the late 70s, early 80s, man, I used to hear, when I was growing up, I used to hear Freeway Jam on the local rock station all the time. I'm sure they don't play it anymore, but back then, always loved hearing it. Coming in at number 2, again from my favorite Blow by Blow album, how about 'Cause We've Ended as Lovers? Again, another just gorgeous tune written by Stevie Wonder, okay, given to Jeff for this album, and some of Jeff's most incredible lead guitar work. Just really expressive and emotional. Great, great song. And coming in at number 1 might be a surprise for some of you. Okay, it's not an instrumental track. It's on an album that I know a lot of people kind of crap on. But it's a tune. I remember I bought the album on cassette when it first came out, and because I was a Beck fan, and this was at the time where I had stopped buying LPs and started buying cassettes. I was in college, and I picked this up, and most of the album I was kind of like, oh, I don't know if I like this too much, but there were a couple really great tunes on it. One of them is my favorite Jeff Beck song of all time. It Gets Us All in the End, off the Flash album. That's right, you heard it here. A great hard rock tune, but it's got, the rhythms are kind of like poppy, dancey almost, in a weird way. All right, because a lot of that album's got kind of like this R&B disco, post-disco thing going on, and some of the rhythms in that tune are like that, but the guitar is all like hard rock and like shred. You got Jeff just unleashing these white-hot torrents of jagged guitar riffs and solos, and he's going berserk on the whammy bar, and it's for my money his most savage playing on any song on any album he ever did. And you've got Jimmy Hall, the great Jimmy Hall, vocalist of Wet Willie, singing on that track. In fact, he sings on a couple of tunes on that album, just killing it. So for me, that song just cranks. It's just lethal Jeff Beck. It's lethal Jimmy Hall. It's so memorable, and I still can listen to that song today. And in fact, I listened to it again this morning, and I was like, oh, this is just as great as I remember it, 30 some odd years ago. So that's my number 1 tune. So let's go through some honorable mentions, and I got a shitload of them. So all the way back to Truth. How about Shapes of Things? Green Sleeves. Rock My Plimsoll. That's a great one. Old Man River, a great slow blues track. Of course, Beck's Bolero. That probably sits just outside of my top 10. It's a great tune. Blues Deluxe, and of course, I Ain't Superstitious, right? Got to have that. From Beckola, All Shook Up. Plinth, Water Down the Drain. The Hangman's Knee. How cool is that tune? And Rice Pudding, of course, right? Tell you, that second album, very underrated. Very underrated. It's a shame that they didn't continue on doing more after that album. From the Rough and Ready album, again, another underrated album, really strong. Situation, Short Business. How about the instrumental Max's tune, also called Rains' Park Blues, and then New Ways / Train Train. Okay? One thing I do want to mention, as I listened to that album again this morning, it's amazing how much Bobby Tench reminds me of like a young Glenn Hughes. It's like you listen to that Rough and Ready album, it almost feels a little bit like some of that old trapeze stuff. It's got a very similar voice to Glenn. From the Jeff Beck Group album, how about Ice Cream Cakes? Glad All Over. I Can't Give Back the Love I Feel for You. Going Down, right? The classic Going Down, Highways, and then definitely Maybe, which for my money is the best song off that album, and also something that sits just outside of my top 10. From Beck, Bogart, and Appice, War and Peace. Black Cat Moan, great tune that I wish someone else sang besides Mr. Beck, because the vocal is terrible, but the song is great. Their version of Superstition, awesome. Another one that sits just outside of my top 10. The ballad Sweet Sweet Surrender, really cool, and Lose Myself With You. From Blow by Blow, like I said, I could just put that whole album in my top 10. The kickoff track, You Know What I Mean, great kind of funky fusion-y tune. She's a Woman, their cover of the Beatles classic, awesome. Constipated Duck, Air Blower, I love Air Blower. Thelonious and Diamond Dust, all great songs. From Wired, Come Dancing, Jeff's remake of Goodbye Pork Pie Hat is amazing. Head for Backstage Pass, The Incredible Blue Wind, and of course Play With Me. From There and Back, I didn't put any of those tunes in my top 10. Actually, the first song on the album was in my early version of my top 10, but it got booted at the last minute. Star Cycle, great tune, very memorable song. You Never Know, another great one. The Pump, El Becco, The Crankin' Space Boogie, and The Final Piece. A couple other tunes from Flash. How about Ambitious, another tune with Jimmy Hall from Wet Willie singing. People Get Ready, which was his, the reason that album got as much attention as it did is because that was his first collaboration with Rod Stewart in many, many years. Okay, you got Escape. In fact, I think he won a Grammy Award for Escape. Great instrumental tune. And then the funky You Know We Know. All right, from Jeff Beck's Guitar Shop, how about the title track, Guitar Shop? Savoy, Behind the Veil, Big Block, love cranking Big Block, Stand on It, and Slingshot. From who else? How about What Mama Said, Psycho Sam, Brush with the Blues, Space for the Papa, and Hypnotica. Who else is a pretty good album? Again, a lot of his more recent ones, utilizing like kind of industrial and techno and hip hop elements. Okay, doesn't always work, but I applaud Jeff for constantly reinventing himself and always doing something different every album. You Had It Coming, Rolling and Tumbling, Earthquake, Roy's Toy, that's a good tune. Nadia's great. Dirty Mind, and Loose Cannon. From the Jeff album, how about So What, Plan B, Porcupine, and Grease Monkey. Again, a lot of his more recent albums incorporating like female vocalists, pop singers, rock singers, hip-hop singers. Doesn't always work for me, but musically I always love the material, and his guitar playing is just as relevant as ever. From Emotion and Commotion, how about Hammerhead? His wonderful take on Somewhere Over the Rainbow, which is really beautiful. I Put a Spell on You, great cover with vocals by Joss Stone, the always incredible Joss Stone, and then Serene. And finally from Loud Hailer, his most recent album, The Revolution Will Be Televised, Right Now, Edna, and Oil, Can't Get Enough of That Sticky. Okay, so let's recap my top 10. All right, coming in at number 1, Gets Us All in the End from Flash. Number 2, Because We've Ended as Lovers from Blow by Blow. Also from Blow by Blow on the next 2, we got Freeway Jam coming in at number 3. Lead Boots coming in at number 4. Sorry, I got 2 Blow by Blows and 1 Wired. Lead Boots at number 4. From Jeff Beck's Guitar Shop, we got Where Were You? Number 6, Let Me Love You, Baby from Truth. Number 7, Scatterbrain, also from Blow by Blow. Number 8, Lady from Beck, Bogart, and Appice. Number 9, Spanish Boots from Beckola. And coming in at number 10, we've got a tie, Got the Feeling from Rough and Ready, and Sophie from Wired. That's my top 10 songs from the always wonderful Jeff Beck, one of the most legendary guitar players ever to hit the rock and roll and jazz fusion scene. And again, a guy you really can't kind of pinpoint to any one genre because he's basically done it all throughout his career. So go ahead and visit us on the web at www.seatranquility.org. We're on Facebook, we're on Twitter, of course we're here on YouTube every day. Got more programming coming up, questions and answers either later today or tomorrow. And then we've got all sorts of classic album wars and top 10 songs and all sorts of fun things coming up. Also this weekend, hopefully you will get the history of Southern rock. So stay tuned for all that. We'll see you again real soon. Take care. Bye-bye.